Not too long ago, China's military surrounded Taiwan for a huge two-day exercise. And yeah, on the surface, it looked like another show of force. But when you dig a little deeper, the name of the operation, the maps they use, the laws they're leaning on, it all points to something much, much bigger. So let's break down what's really going on.
China's People's Liberation Army, the PLA, they described their live-fire drills with this really simple, direct phrase: a stern warning. This wasn't just some routine practice. This was a message. And it was aimed squarely at what Beijing calls Taiwan Independence Forces.
And the scale of this warning, it was serious. Just look at this number, 27. That's how many rockets the PLA launched on just the second day of these drills. It was a massive demonstration of firepower, and you can be sure it was designed to be seen and heard.
But it wasn't just about how many rockets they fired. It was about how close they got. Some of those rockets landed inside what's called Taiwan's contiguous zone. That's basically the buffer area right outside its territorial waters. This was, no exaggeration, the closest China has ever conducted live-fire drills to the island. It's an absolutely unprecedented move, and it really raised the stakes. Okay, so this is where we start to peel back the layers of the onion, because the military action, that's really only one part of the story. The name China picked for this whole thing, Justice Mission 2025, well, that name is a massive clue to a much deeper strategy. I mean, think about it for a second. Why would you call a military exercise a justice mission? Usually, military ops get names that sound tough or strategic. Stuff like Operation Desert Storm or Joint Sword. So why justice? Well, that choice of words is totally deliberate and really, really powerful. And this comparison right here just nails the point. On the left, you've got the military drill. And on the right, you have the International Justice Mission, or IJM, a well-known global human rights group that fights things like slavery. So, by calling its military operation Justice Mission, Beijing is intentionally borrowing the language of human rights and international law. It's a way to frame its military pressure as something righteous, something legal.
And this strategy didn't stop with the name. It carried right on over to the visuals. There was this official map of the drills that made the rounds online, and believe me, it was way more than just a map. Every single label, every line on it, was a carefully crafted political statement.
So let's get into the details here. First off, it calls the self-governing island of Taiwan, Taiwan Province, just to hammer home Beijing's claim. Then it labels the Senkaku Islands, which Japan administers, by their Chinese name, Diaoyu, and marks them as Chinese. And maybe the most shocking part, it describes Japan's Ryukyu Islands, which include Okinawa, as Japanese-occupied. See, this is not just a map of a drill, it's a visual manifesto of China's territorial ambitions. Okay, so you've got the name, you've got the map. How does all of this fit together into a bigger strategy? Well, these things aren't just random actions. They're all part of a much larger doctrine China's been building to project its power, a concept it calls rule by law. Now, it is absolutely critical to understand this is not the same as the Western idea of rule of law. The rule of law means the law is above everyone, even the government, right? Well, China's rule by law is different. It's a system where the law is an instrument used by the Communist Party to get what it wants. It's a tool for power, not a limit on it. And this strategy basically has two parts, and one legal expert came up with a great metaphor for it: the spear and the shield. The spear is China passing its own domestic laws that it says apply outside of its borders. And the shield? That's a whole set of counter-sanction laws designed to punish any foreign companies or people that go along with sanctions against China. So, what's the end game here? The ultimate goal is to basically blur the lines between China's own laws and international law. By doing that, the party wants to create a whole new global legal system where its own rules and interests come first, and its power can be projected way, way beyond its own borders. So, China's doing all this. What is the rest of the world saying about it? Well, once you understand that this isn't just about military drills, that is this multi-layered campaign of military, linguistic, and legal pressure, the global reaction starts to make a lot more sense.
And the list of nations that voiced serious concern, well, it was long. It spanned continents. You had the big players like the United States and the European Union, along with major regional powers like Japan, Australia, and the Philippines. This shows you this wasn't just seen as a regional tiff. It was a broad international condemnation, which tells you how seriously the world was taking.
And this is exactly why this all matters so much.
The international community isn't just reacting to a few ships and some rockets. They're responding to a really sophisticated, integrated playbook, a playbook that combines military intimidation with some very clever linguistic framing and a legal strategy that's designed to completely reshape international norms. So all of this really points to a new kind of conflict, one that's fought not just on battlefields, but in courtrooms, on maps, and in the very words that we use. So what does this new normal really mean for all of us?
When you look at the pattern, the strategic goal here seems pretty clear. The idea is to make these intense military drills and encirclements feel normal, routine. By normalizing this constant pressure, Beijing hopes to slowly chip away at Taiwan's autonomy and create a new status quo, one that's defined by coercion, without ever having to fire a single shot in a real war.
And that leaves us with a really fundamental question for the future of, well, everything. When the tools of peace, things like justice and the law, are turned into weapons of power and pressure, how do nations that believe in an open, rules-based world even begin to respond? That is the challenge that China's justice mission poses to every one of us.